Welcome back, Tiger fans, to Rockin' Radio's football podcast. I'm Nate Edwards, and this is Before the Box Score. Nathan Hurst has got the night off again, second of third consecutive week, so I hope he is doing whatever it is that he does in happiness, while I am busy talking to friends of the show and figuring out what exactly we have in this Missouri football season that's coming up. So last week we did the mighty return of BK, Brandon Kiley from 101 ESPN. This week we get to revisit with an old friend of ours, friend of the pod, SEC Michael Bratton. Recently a movie star from his appearance in the Netflix documentary Any Given Saturday. So I'll be talking to him today. We're talking his takes on Missouri, the SEC teams that Missouri plays, and a little walk through kind of how he views the SEC at large as we head into the 2025 season. So I appreciate him taking the time to jump on here. He is a busy, famous man, and he still came by around our parts to share his knowledge and his wealth of humor, good humor, and observation for the SEC. So without further ado, let's jump into that, and welcome to the show, SEC Mike. Well, I am joined here today by the illustrious SEC Mike, better known as Michael Bratton, better known as the star of Any Given Saturday, Netflix's college football show. Hey, Mike, it's our annual tradition of reviewing Missouri and the SEC right before the season starts. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, yeah, I'm doing great, Nate. Thank you for that kind introduction. Certainly, I'm no star of anything over here. I'm barely in Netflix, but I guess I am in it now. Someone did ask me if I'm changing my name to from SEC Mike to Netflix Mike, and I am considering it.
Dude, do it. Just add it like a title, right? Like you're your colonel, just add it onto your titles, man. It's all good. But yeah, we are getting ready for this season. It's going to be a very interesting season, both for the SEC and college football at large. But of course, I didn't bring Mike here to talk about all of college football. I brought him here to talk about the SEC and Mizzou's opponents and Mizzou a little bit itself. So we're going to kind of take a leisurely stroll through the tapestry around here. I want to start off, Mike, with just kind of the broad view. Obviously, you just got done with SEC Media Days. I've talked to a lot of people, kind of heard all the statements. What is the state of the SEC heading into the 2025 football season?
Well, I think the SEC has certainly been challenged by the Big Ten. I mean, I think that goes without saying. Not only has the SEC failed to capture the last two national championships, they didn't even play for either one of them, which is like, that's absurd to me after what, eight in a row not that long ago. And I mean, the SEC speaks for itself, but hey, there's a lot of haters out there, and maybe there's some justification for that because the Big Ten is looking stronger than perhaps ever. But I still think the Big Ten is about four schools, and the rest are just Indiana's and Illinois. That personally, I think those schools suck. But while in the SEC, I think it's a fascinating year, Nate. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, but we still have the perceived favorites like a Georgia and a Texas, and I would throw Alabama in there, but I don't think there's much separation at all between those. And I mean, not in a strong year, maybe you'd say 5 or 6 SEC teams. Mm-hmm. Dare I say, I mean, up to 10 to 12 this year. I don't think there's a lot of separation. Again, I get it. If people want to just anoint Texas and Georgia, that's fine. But those teams are not as deep as historically they have been. And heck, Texas is all. Oh, we shouldn't even include Texas in this. I mean, they have sucked for the better part of 10 years. They've just been good the last 2. So I don't even throw them into the conversation. I'm talking more Georgia and Alabama, if you will. But and obviously we don't root for injuries, but if they lose a key player here, key player there, there's no difference between what they have and what most of the SEC has. And I think that's exciting as hell going into this football season.
No, I think a lot of what NIL and the portal has done, it has thinned out the depth. You think of those classic Alabama teams or Georgia teams of yesteryear. the Blue Bloods have succeeded for a long time just in stockpiling talent because guys couldn't go anywhere. And now that they can, there is just less depth. You're not rotating in 6 NFL players every single time that you take the field. It's there's a little bit more risk that is involved with it. So I'm with you. I think, every conference has top 2, top 3, top 4, and every conference has a bottom 2, 3, or 4. Really, the quality of the conference, I feel like, is determined by the middle and what they do against everybody else in the nation and how that stacks out in conference as well. And like, to your point, I agree with you. I feel like, for me, I would put, Alabama, Texas, Georgia. I mean, I'm even throwing A&M into the playoff. I don't know if they're elite yet, but they're certainly going to be making some good moves this year. But, given that the conference is only as strong as its middle, is this the best middle of the SEC that we've ever had?
I think you could certainly make that case. Now, those teams got to do their part to kind of push towards a college football playoff. It's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because last year we had, we always have debates in college football. To me, that's what makes it so fun. But Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina all 9-3, right? And instead of kind of making a hard decision, the playoff committee just said, well, heck, let's just not include any of them, which maybe I'm not even debating whether that was right or wrong, because I certainly see the case against all those, probably a little bit stronger than 4. But my point being, that is good. And to your question, I think this is the strongest the middle has ever been, but we could also beat ourselves up. Like we just had the coaches poll came out, 9 SEC teams. I know your fan base is well aware of who's not in there, but 11 of the top 27, that's good, right? We can brag about that. We're better than the Big Ten. Big Ten sucks aside from 4 teams. But the problem is the Big Ten is going to get their 3 or 4 in, and they're not going to have anyone else competing for that 4th or 5th spot. Whereas in the SEC, we're probably going to have 6 teams battling for, 2 or 3 playoff spots, and we're capable of knocking each other off. So it's good, but it's also, I could see how that could be a bad thing too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if you just want to get a team into the playoff, Texas and Oklahoma should have stayed exactly where they were, beat up on the Big 12 and then get your 2 teams in, and that's it. Now, they were looking for something a little bit more than just showing up in the playoff. They want a little bit more security. That's why, you can't spell security without SEC, just throwing that out there. But that's why they came. The SEC is looking to collect helmets, and they were willing to come in. But that also means, guess what? You have to deal with more losses now. That's why I always feel like the concept of a Super League is so just way out there. College football fans are not ready for Ohio State losing 3 games a year. Michigan, Texas, Alabama, Georgia. Are you still going to care as much if you lose 3 or 4 games every single year? I don't know. There's something to be said about the Blue Bloods losing only 1 or 2 games a year, and kind of building up that myth so that when they do lose, it's a big deal. And now if you kind of thin out their depth and now everybody can pick off anybody, it makes you a little bit more vulnerable. It makes you a little less impact when you do have a loss. But as far as equity, making it equitable for everybody. That means everybody in the SEC has a chance. Win 10 games, you're in the playoff talk. That could be Alabama, Georgia. That could be Vanderbilt. I don't know. Mississippi State. Like it gives more opportunities. So I'm with you. It does kind of take away a little bit of the luster as far as the SEC goes. But then again, it is the best conference. You should probably lose a few games in the best conference in the country. That's part of it too. And I think at least so far, the playoff committee seems to value wins over losses. But let's see you go through a gauntlet like this year in and year out, and how they change that. So as we talk about Missouri a little bit, I saw you had your top 15 transfers of the year. And I really wanted to pick your brain on this because you had not 1, but 4 Missouri Tiger transfers coming in. And no other school on your list has more than 3. So what went into your ratings of the transfers? And I guess, what are your expectations for Bo Prabula, Ahmad Hardy, Kevin Coleman, and Damon Wilson this year?
Yeah, this is the thing that Mizzou fans have been in our mentions about seemingly every day. If we dare utter anything negative about the Tigers, it's like, have you seen this portal class? And the more you dive into it, I mean, we didn't even get into Jeremiah Trotter, freshman All-American. I mean, they've got guy after guy after guy. And, you know, we talk about the portal, we talk about NIL. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think that Missouri is well aware that they have an advantage here that may be closing soon. And I think last year it's been well documented. They spent not just on football, but on all sports. I can't remember the figure. You would probably know better than I, but it was, you know, I think it was over 20 million, maybe over 30 million.
31, yeah.
31 million on athletics. So again, they're doing it again based on these portal acquisitions, which is all legal. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's a tremendous thing, and I think that's a huge reason why the football programs won 21 games in the last 2 years. So they're doing everything they can to be competitive on the field, and now we're seeing it again with the transfer portal. We mentioned already how Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Texas, not as deep because of the portal. Well, what it's also done is for a program like Missouri or Ole Miss or Tennessee or really anybody that's taken advantage of the portal, now we don't have these lulls anymore where Missouri's sending these guys to the NFL in years past. Well, it'd probably take 2 or 3 years to build that kind of quality player back up at certain key positions. Now you just go right to the portal. And we went to the portal, sent a running back to the NFL. Let's go get another one who's about to do the same thing if things go correctly. So, I mean, I think that has kind of been the huge thing of the transfer portal, and credit Missouri and company for nailing this. The only, and it's way too early, right? Because who in the heck knows? But I would have been a little bit more intrigued, I think, and your audience is not going to like this either. But I try to keep it real, right? If they, instead of Bo Prabula, if they got Miller Moss,
yeah.
I think it would have been a little bit more excited about Missouri because, again, is Miller Moss like going to win the Heisman? No, but I think he's going to kill it for Jeff Brom. I think he's a tremendous coach. Whereas maybe Bo, I mean, he could be incredible too, but I think there's probably going to be a learning curve there, stepping into a starting role in this conference. But, you know, you were asking me about the standouts. I mean, I've said this before. I don't know if you've seen this, but I think Ahmad Hardy is going to lead the SEC in rushing this year. So I think he's that type of impact player. I've heard some wild statistics about him, including I think he had about 1,000 yards after contact last year. I mean, that's insane. Yeah. We saw him just this week noting that, heck, every lineman we got on this Missouri roster is a lot bigger than the lineman I had at my previous stop. So I think he is going to be incredibly good. I know so much attention is always on the quarterback. Missouri's been outstanding at receiver the last couple of years, but Eli Drinkwitz, his offense is all designed through the running game, and he's got guy after guy after guy, been highly productive in this conference, gotten them to the NFL. I think Ahmad Hardy is going to be the next in that line. You asked me about Kevin Coleman. I mean, he's just a big play machine. I love the confidence. I love the cockiness. I've heard some interesting things about him behind the scenes, and he's another one that has kind of been at many different stops. So this is not going to be a situation where I think there's a big learning curve. I think he's ready to go in, be your number one receiver. I think he's going to have a huge year. It's just, for me, it's all about, and you know, maybe we spend too much time talking about Bo, because for all I know, it could be Sam Horn, who's your starting quarterback. But you know, I don't know. It's so cheap and so easy to say the quarterback is a focal point of the offseason. But for Missouri, I can't think of a team in the SEC that could go one of either way if they hit at the quarterback more than Missouri. Like, I think they could make the playoff if they hit at quarterback. I think they could go 7-5 if they miss. I mean, I think it's that wide of a variance.
Yeah. I mean, just the way that Eli Drinkwitz teams play, you know, every game is a close game. And if you want to win a close game, you got to have really clutch quarterback play. And, for all of his faults, Brady was very good. Brady Cook was very good when he needed to be. And to start over again and with a guy that you don't know, does he have it? We don't know. Whether it's Sam Horn or Bo Pribula. So I agree with you on that. I do find it funny that you even brought him up. Josiah Trotter, I am so excited about him. Didn't even crack your top 15, which I understand. There's a lot of great players that came into the SEC this year. But he and Damon Wilson, I think, are going to be featured. I think they're going to wreck shop, and along with Bo, who's going to be taking side. I do think he's going to win the starting quarterback spot.
And one more that we didn't even hit on too. I absolutely love one of my favorite players in recent SEC history is Jalen Catalon.
That's right. Yeah.
Who he's bounced around. The only thing with him is, unfortunately, he's been banged up a lot. So fingers crossed that he can stay healthy for the full season. If he does, man, I love that guy. I mean, he is legit all SEC caliber type player. He could be the best player that Missouri got out of the transfer portal. That wouldn't stun me either. Yeah.
No, he's great. I remember cursing that guy in 2019 and 2020. I was like, oh my God, this guy sucks. And now he plays for Missouri, which is great. It's wild how things change. All right, so let's walk through Missouri's SEC schedule here. Obviously, we don't play everybody. We got a lot amount, and most of these teams that we played last year. So thinking back to South Carolina, I think they easily took the mantle from Missouri of, hottest underdog team of the SEC last year, powered by Lenora Sellers, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And that might be it. I mean, I know I'm an outsider. I'm not a fan, but they really benefited from Sellers' play and the fact that he was able to make an okay offense look awesome with big plays, and that defense that had really exploded and havoc plays. So like explosive plays on offense can be very streaky, and of course they're replacing a lot mostly on defense. So I guess in your mind, is Lenora Sellers good enough to take South Carolina on another magical run in 2025?
I certainly think he is, Nate, because I don't think there's a player in the conference that took a bigger step forward from week 1 to week 12 than Lenora Sellers, because we referenced the Netflix show. They kind of glossed over it, but South Carolina nearly lost to Old Dominion in the opener last year. I mean, it was an awful, ugly game. I think their defense had something like 9 or 10 sacks. And I think they had a strip sack inside the Old Dominion, like 5-yard line, that they scored a touchdown. They only won that game by a couple points. So point being, he was awful right out the gate. And it looked like South Carolina was going to be in for a really bad year. Of course, we know now they went 9-3. They were the hottest team in the conference by the end of the season. So, I mean, he looked like $1 million at the end of the year. If he can take that step forward, yeah, South Carolina is really dangerous. They do have a new offensive coordinator, Mike Shula. He was there last year as an analyst, and based on people that I trust, he's a massive upgrade over Dow Loggins. So I think Dow Loggins, who's now the head coach at Appalachian State, I think he benefited greatly from having Lenora Sellers as his quarterback. But, it's not all good. They have to replace the interior, their offensive line. Rocket Sanders was huge for them at running back after he transferred in from Arkansas. They're kind of relying on a new transfer from Utah State, Rasul Faison, I believe is how you say his name, but he has still not been granted eligibility by the NCAA, so they may not have him. They do have a couple young receivers. I really like Mazio Bennett. He was a true freshman last year. Everybody, I think, knows Nick Harbor just for his freakish speed and size, but he is still a work in progress. And they really lost a really good tight end in Josh Simon. There's a lot of unknown with South Carolina, and even in that front seven, where they've got Dylan Stewart, who I think is the best defensive lineman in the conference, but he is literally the only returning starter on the front seven for South Carolina. And they lost Nick Amamwari, who was a high second-round pick in the NFL draft at safety. So, huge question for South Carolina is, can they replace that high-end production? I don't know that they're built for that. I really don't.
No. But at least they have Lenora Sellers, and he makes a lot of things look good. And, kind of moving to Alabama, I think so many people said the Alabama dynasty was over last year. But to me, I think it was just that, they were just as good as they were in previous years. It's just that they had way more close games and they were unlucky to lose a couple of them late. But that's just my take. Do you view the Tide as a toppled empire, or was last year just a blip?
Well, as someone who coined the phrase "the decaying dynasty" when Nick Saban was there, you would think I'm down on him, but no, Alabama's actually my pick to win the SEC this year. I think they bounce back in a huge way, and I think your listeners will appreciate this. But I've heard this, and I've stole it here from one of our listeners, but. Coach Kalen DeBoer, I call him DeBoring. Kalen DeBoer, he is awful to listen to. He's like the anti-James Franklin. James Franklin can't win a big game to save his life. He wins all these games he's supposed to win. DeBoring does the exact opposite. He's a killer in these big games. He's undefeated against Sark. He's undefeated against Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning. Yet he can't beat Clark Lee. I mean, that's DeBoring right there. He lost to Brent Venables, who Venables, great defensive coordinator, very questionable to call him a good head coach. So, can they get over? All they got to do is win the games that that they're supposed to win. And I think Alabama will be really, really good this year. I know everybody's we always go back to the quarterback, right? Well, they don't have a quarterback. I don't think it really matters because I think their offensive line is going to be one of the best in the conference. I think their receivers are some of the best in the conference, and I think they could have the most improved defense. I believe they ranked fourth in returning overall production on the defense returning. So I think the defense should be pretty good as well. I think Alabama's got as much talent as anybody.
They do.
Last year was an aberration with the Saban turnover and all that going on. And just when I thought we were closing the chapter on Nick Saban, Greg McElroy says he's coming back. So who knows? Maybe he knows more than I do.
Jeez, no. Stay home, Nick. Go be a husband. Go be a granddad. Well, we don't need any more of that. So let's go to the other side of that rivalry. Let's talk about Auburn. Hugh Freeze has really hung his hat on being an elite high school recruiter. And yet this offseason, I'm looking at his roster and he is, pulling G5 transfers, FCS transfers, a bad cast-off quarterback from Oklahoma. I'm not going to read, too much into this, but it kind of feels like he's got to save his job. So is the fact that he's going into the transfer portal at all a positive because he's like thinking outside the box? Or is he just doing this because he has to do something to save his job?
Well, if you ask him, 9 times out of 10, he's a hell of a coach. That's what he said after Arkansas. Which, nine times out of 10, we'd beat them. But no, I mean, it doesn't matter what happens with him, Nate. He's going to throw somebody under the bus, whether it's Jackson Arnold, Peyton Thorne, who's not even on the roster anymore, but he'll find a way to blame him. Hugh Freeze, this is a joke I say all the time, but it's true. How can you trust a man to run your football program, but you don't trust him to run his social media account? Yeah. That's what Auburn has right now. I think Hugh Freeze is a complete fraud. I think he's living off the fact that he beat Nick Saban. That was 12 years ago. Yet he's still, that's kind of, I bet when he meets people, he lets them know he beats Nick Saban 12 years ago. Because he's not really done anything since. He should have stayed at Liberty. I think he had a better path to the college football playoff at Liberty, being the G5 representative, than he'll ever have at Auburn. I anticipate it's going to crash and burn at Auburn. Now, you could probably say that they've been building for this, right? Because to your point, he's a high school recruiter. He can schmooze with the mom. He can BS the dad. That's what he does, and he gets these guys on campus. Auburn has got way more talent than to be 5-7 again. Mm-hmm. But they had more talent than a 5-7 last year, and they did it. So I don't know. And you talk about Jackson Arnold. I think he's perhaps the biggest X factor in the whole conference, because he could be $1 million. He was a 5-star. Oklahoma was telling us he was a savior a year ago. Now they're saying he's a bum. I mean, which one is it? Is he a bum? Is he a savior? I don't know, but he'll have way better talent, particularly at receiver and on the offensive line at Auburn than he had at Oklahoma last year. So it's on his shoulders. But the one thing that just makes no sense to me, Nate, what was Auburn's biggest issue? Turnovers. What's Jackson Arnold's biggest issue? turnovers. Like, why are they combining forces? That it just seems somewhat foolish.
Oh, I agree. They can move the ball, and then there it goes off to the other side. And Mizzou fans can attest. Jackson Arnold loves to turn over the ball. That's why we beat him last year. So I don't know. It's a very odd pairing. I'm curious to see how that goes. And then really we move on to the kind of the hot story of the offseason, and certainly kind of towards the end of last year too, is Vanderbilt. And I'm on the record that I think Vanderbilt is going to be great. They return. Well, they got the number one returning production in the country. They still have Diego Pavia. What is your assessment on the Commodores? You have Diego, and you got Jerry Kill for a second year. What do you think they're going to do this year?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I love Vanderbilt. And I think the stupidest narrative, Nate, that I've heard all off season is like, well, they ain't going to sneak up on people this year. They beat Alabama a month into the season. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, how about when they played Texas a couple weeks? Did they sneak up on Texas? Did they sneak up on Auburn, who they beat on the road? Did they sneak up on Kentucky? I know some of these teams are not fantastic, but you can't just say those teams like slipwalk into that game after we saw Vanderbilt beat number one Alabama. It makes no sense. I love the returning production, like you noted. Diego Pavia, is he ever going to play it down in the NFL? I don't think so. No. But he's a tremendous college quarterback, and that's what they need. I think this is something Vanderbilt should have been doing years ago, playing. I mean, what it really is like a shotgun triple option. Mm-hmm. You have to limit the possessions, play bend, but don't break on defense. Clark Lee, he really is a good coach. I know no one could tell it until he actually got some players to work with, but he really is a good coach. And they have gone to the portal. It's incredible, Nate, all the connections they have that go back to their New Mexico State days. They get all these transfers that either were recruited by them or were coached by them. Now they're all in Nashville. So this is basically New Mexico State East, and somehow it's working. The schedule's not easy, but I think it's very achievable that they get back to a bowl game. And I think you would agree with this. I'm kind of leaning towards them improving their record from last year.
Oh yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, if you look at what they did, I mean, yeah, Virginia Tech was close. Yes, Georgia State was a close loss, but they were right there with Mizzou. They were right there with Texas. They were right there with LSU. Like they were the reverse Eli Drinkwitz, right? They could not win a close game, but they were losing close, which is something that against these teams they did not ever do. And the trope is, once you lose close, then you can start winning close. And I just think a second year with Diego in the SEC with Jerry Kill still on staff there, their portal additions, God, they're going to beat Mizzou this year, and I'm already upset about it. I'll respect it, but I'm preparing myself for it because, boy, that's going to be a tough one.
And I really like their running back, Cedric Alexander, too. He's very, very underrated.
He's good.
And the best tight end probably in the conference, Eli Stowers.
Yeah. Oh, Eli Stowers is great. And another New Mexico State guy. Mm-hmm. Cedric Alexander is like Diego Pavia of running backs. Like, you're not exactly sure how he did it, but he just does it. He just gets it done. Dangerous team. Not looking forward to that one. Another one I'm not looking forward to is Texas A&M because, to me, like I said, they're a playoff team. But then again, every time the Aggies have expectations, they meet it with like a resounding thud. So this year's schedule, it's just as tough as last year's schedule. Where do you stand with Texas A&M?
Man, this is probably going to be a bad podcast, Nate, because we're like in tune on everything. But I like A&M to make the college football playoff. Now, again, am I locking that down? Am I guaranteeing it? Certainly, I am not. There's three teams in the conference that I feel very good about making the playoff, and it's pretty chalk. It's Texas, it's Georgia, it's Alabama, and I think a fourth will make it. I am going with A&M to be that fourth team, but Marcel Reed's got to get a little bit better. Texas A&M, I mean, I know we live in, what have you done for me lately society, but it wasn't that long ago where A&M was 7-1 in first place in the SEC. And even as horrible as the final month of the season went for them, they lost and got punked is what happened against South Carolina. They went down 21-0 to Auburn. They did crawl back in that game, but lost it either way. When they faced Texas, Had they beaten Texas, they would have went to the SEC championship. So again, I think people kind of like write them off as just 8-4, which they deserve that because they do it seemingly every year. But this was a little bit different story. This was a red hot team that was number one in the SEC, and yeah, things went sideways on them late in the year. That was year one of a new head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Year two, everything offense, defense. Year two, quarterback. Really, for the quarterback, it's his first year as the true starting quarterback, getting the fall reps, getting the spring reps as your starting quarterback. So there's a lot to like about Texas A&M. They were a running machine last year. They bring back literally everybody on the offensive line. Their top 7 are back from the offensive line. Their top 3 running backs are back. And they're another one that now everybody loves everybody they got out of the portal, right? Until we actually see them hit the field. But by all accounts, they love what they got out of Casey Concepcion, the receiver. They're talking up the tight end Amari Niblack, who played at Alabama and Texas. Of course, Cousin Shane says, well, if you're on your third stop, it's because you can't play. So maybe the truth is somewhere in between. I don't know. But
sure.
A&M certainly is not going to be short of weaponry, I don't think, to surround Marcel Reed. And another name to know, Terry Bussey. He was a 5-star true freshman last year. He wasn't very productive. I think he only had like 280 yards or something like that. But he was a defensive player that they switched to offense in fall camp. So this is his second year as a receiver. I think they'll be looking for him to be a breakout candidate as well.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with A&M is that they made a lot of safe throws, a lot of like close to the line throws. And maybe it's because Marcel Reed couldn't hit it, or maybe they didn't have the receivers to do it. If it was a receiver problem, you nailed it. Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion, big play guys, right? They like to run down the field and catch deep balls. So like the weaponry is there. You're absolutely right. And if it hits, like you say with all these teams, right? Hey, if the transfers hit, this could work out really well. I was like, okay, great analysis. But yeah, I think they did exactly what they needed to do to better their chances, and that's why I think they're going to just steamroll a bunch of teams. So let's talk about the inverse of that. Oh, Mississippi State, I'm so sorry. Is there any way that they can bring in like 60 plus transfers in 2 years and improve? Or are they just going to stink in new and interesting ways this year?
I think they're going to stink in new and interesting ways because anytime they have a player that breaks out, they just leave. I mean, this sums it up better than anything. Their quarterback emerged as a true freshman, Michael Van Buren. He looks like a future star. He left to go be LSU's backup. I mean, he's not even playing this year. But, if nothing happens to Garrett Nussmeier. Let's hope it doesn't. But I mean, can you imagine? I'm sure he got a pay bump or something. But man, leaving someplace where you'd be the starting and you're kind of the centerpiece of the offense, that makes no sense to me. But unfortunately, I just don't think many people want to play at Mississippi State right now.
Yeah, I mean, Blake Shapen is an old quarterback. He's certainly experienced. He had plenty of years starting in Baylor. He started as a youngster there. He had some pretty good games, and that was against scrubs, but he started off decently well at Mississippi State. Is there any chance that he can just, tape and glue this thing together and just be kind of like a poor man's version of Lenora Sellers and carry this team to a couple more wins?
Well, perhaps, but the real issue is the defense, which is just abysmal. They can't stop the run. They are trying to infuse it with talent via the transfer portal, but it's not like they're getting a bunch of star players. They mostly got lower level guys that at least they got experience. But yeah, I think they brought in some insane number of 60 something transfers. So it's hard to get a read on what this team could be. Their offensive line's completely rebuilt. I mean, in a line of scrimmage league, they are probably dead last when it comes to line of scrimmage as well. So yeah. I don't know what in the world they were doing with Coleman Hutzler, their defensive coordinator, bringing him back. Yeah. I know, and I got roasted by Georgia fan. I get roasted all the time, so I'm numb to it. But I called out Kirby Smart, when he got hired at Georgia I said Tennessee and Florida are going to rule the East as long as Kirby is in Athens, which admittedly horrible take, right? But aside from Kirby Smart, I would never never, never, never in the SEC hire a head coach that does not have head coaching experience. Because it's just there's no time to learn on the job. You think Jeff Lebby's a finished product? Because I don't think he is. How long is Mississippi State going to give him to try to figure it out? And then he doubled down on it and hired a defensive coordinator that's never been a defensive coordinator in Coleman Hutzler. I mean, it's kind of asinine way to build a football program, if you ask me. You got to hire somebody that doesn't need training wheels, and that's what I see when I look at Mississippi State's program right now.
I agree. Mizzou went through the same thing. Our bridge coach was Barry Odom. Never been a head coach in college football before. Here you go. Here's the SEC. This was definitely a bridge coach for Mississippi State too. He was cheap. He wanted the job. And Zach Arnett they needed to get rid of that guy. So, it was, and not only that, but he's his own coordinator, which I feel like is just the dumbest move you can make. I think the only time it really worked was Clark Lee last year. And that's because he had another head coach on staff that was basically running things while he was doing the defense. So it is not a proposition. Nothing that he has done has made a lot of sense. You don't add 34 guys last year and then add another 37 this year and think like, oh, we're fixed. So I don't know. I don't see him lasting long. But then again, does Mississippi State care? Do they care? Or will they give him a couple years to figure it out? Because I think he does need some more seasoning to figure this thing out.
Yeah, no, I think if they go winless in the SEC again, he doesn't get a year 3.
That's fair. Speaking of other guys that are on the hot seat, we'll jaunt over to Oklahoma here. Okay, so as much as I love Oklahoma writhing in pain in the SEC after giving us so much shade for doing exactly what they did 10 years later, what is Oklahoma doing here? Like, Brent Venables, great defensive guy. He's trying to overhaul the offense. He brings in Ben Arbuckle, brings in John Mateer, and then throws in every FCS receiver that was any good, which you're Oklahoma. How do you not have like a Wake Forest or a Cal receiver that wants to come join you? You had to go to the FCS ranks. I don't understand the vision here. I like some of it, but what are your thoughts on Oklahoma heading into this season?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty high on Oklahoma because everybody I talk to loves John Mateer. I like the fact that, we talked up Vanderbilt, we talked up Diego Pavia. Oklahoma, in a sense, is trying to follow that model where they hire the offensive coordinator, they hire the quarterback coach, and get the quarterback. So the transition, at least for the most important player on the team, it should be seamless relatively. They added Jaden Ott, too, from Cal, who he was not that effective last year due mostly to injuries, but 2 years ago was one of the best running backs in the country. Yeah, receiver, an issue, no doubt. I really like Deion Burks, though. He was a transfer they got last year from Purdue. He was another one that got banged up. Yep. They have some young guys they believe in. But really, I think the $1 million question for Oklahoma is none of those things that we've hit on. It's the offensive line, because they were so bad last year. They were like the opposite of Texas. Texas came in here. They were ready for the SEC because they had been developing that offensive line for years. Meanwhile, Oklahoma just tried to patch it together with some transfers, kind of like you're saying these receivers, and it blew up mightily in their face. And it was just pathetic to watch that the Sooner offense last year. If John Mateer could be the best quarterback in the country, Jaden Ott could be the best running back in the country. If the offensive line sucks, none of it's going to matter. They're going to get eaten up alive. So that's kind of where I got my eyes on with Oklahoma, specifically on the offense. But on defense, I think they're going to be really, really good again. For any bad thing I can say about Brent Venables, I think he's obviously an elite defensive mind. I think they've got the best defensive line in the SEC, maybe the country. We had Cole Kublik on the show. I respect his opinion more than just about anybody when it comes to college football, and he says this is the best defensive line in the SEC. So it all starts up front. That's how Tennessee got to the playoff last year, was an elite defensive line. Yep. And I'm not saying the Sooners will follow suit, but I think that defensive line will keep them in just about every game.
Well, you certainly hope so. because otherwise you're asking John Mateer to throw to Giovanni Gibson of Arkansas Pine Bluff and Will Huggins from Pittsburgh State and Carson Kent from Kennesaw State, and have been blocked by 2 Stanford guys and a Western Carolina offensive tackle. So,
yeah, so there's
that's
things to like, there's things not to like.
Let's hope, let's hope the defense can score, twice a game. That'd be nice. And then we'll round it out because Arkansas, I mean, they are Missouri's forced rival, and we get a cool trophy every single year when we beat them, except for that one year. But they portal in almost as many folks as Mississippi State. Certainly not as many because no one comes close, but they were up there. But they had a much better record than Mississippi State did. So what the heck is going on in Arkansas? And is Taylor Green enough to hold this team together?
Well, what's going on is, for all the crap that Sam Pittman takes, he's not a good coach, yada, yada, yada. He does a really good job of hiring coordinators. Now, he made one horrible decision. He brought back Dan Enos, but he quickly rectified that because before that, he had Barry Odom, who we referenced, and Kendall Browse. During that time, that was the best coordinator duo, I think, in the conference. Now, I wouldn't put them up there that high today, but I think they're not far off because Bobby Petrino, well, you could say a lot of bad things about Bobby Petrino, but one of the good things is he's a tremendous play caller. He develops these quarterbacks. I think Taylor Green is his next star. I think he's going to be a huge, huge breakout player. I mean, he's already broken out last year. He played pretty well, but he had a lot of turnovers. We got to curb that. But I think, that is the main reason for optimism at Arkansas. And Travis Williams, the defensive coordinator, I think he's a future head coach in college football. He's really good. His problem is he doesn't have that much to work with in terms of overall talent. So I think the defense is going to be pretty bad. I think if Arkansas is going to find ways to win, it's going to be shootouts. And for as much nice things as I can say about Taylor Green, he doesn't have anyone to throw the ball to either. Yeah. Arkansas returns, I believe, 11% of their receiving production from last year. That is absolutely dead last. I don't think anyone else is even in the 20s. Everyone is 30% or higher in the conference. So they return literally nobody at receiver. That could be a major problem for the Razorbacks.
Yeah, their leading returning receiver is Rodney Hill, who, by the way, is a running back and was targeted 12 times last year. That's it. That's the one you're looking for. Now they went the similar route, right? UAB, Fresno State, Charlotte, Montana State. Now these were good players. I actually like Rohan. They're tight end, but like haven't been here before, haven't been playing the SEC before. What's that look like to get acclimated? There's just a lot of questions there. So
yeah, and one thing maybe I read too much into things sometimes, but Taylor Green last year, what I recall, he had a lot of really tall receivers, and he threw a lot of, kind of like 50-50 balls that he knew his guys could come down with. Mm-hmm. This year, it's a different story. All these guys that Arkansas went and got out, they're quicker, they're faster, but they're much smaller. Mm-hmm. So, that you throw 50-50 balls to those guys, yeah, you're gonna find yourself throwing some interceptions that you wouldn't have last year, if that makes sense.
That's right. No, I gotcha. All right. Last question, then we'll get you out of here. Missouri Tigers. Record, opinion. What are we going to do this year? What do you think is going to happen?
Give me 9-3 for Missouri.
Okay.
Which, hey, maybe I'm dead wrong about, because last I heard, Nate, this is another thing Missouri fans say in the mentions, we can't be beat at home. Which, hey, if they don't get beat at home, I think they're probably 11-1 this year. The problem is they got. I think their 2 toughest games, Alabama and A&M. Well, again, I got both those teams in the playoff. Mm-hmm. I got Alabama winning the conference. So, I mean, for all I know, Missouri's the, 3rd or 4th best team in this conference, but I don't know if they can beat those 2 teams. But maybe they can beat A&M. And then they'll probably find another loss, maybe at Oklahoma, maybe at Auburn. Yep. And we've already mentioned Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt could be a very, very tricky game. South Carolina, but again, 9-3. That probably you're just short of the college football playoff. I think you got to get to 10-2 with this schedule. But I certainly think 10-2 is possible, particularly if the defense continues to trend forward and we hit on a lot of these transfers. I'd be curious to know your thoughts on the decision to extend Corey Batoon. I don't hate it, but it's kind of like when they extended Brent Venables at Oklahoma. I'm like, what? How about we wait a year? I would have preferred to wait a year for Corey Batoon to get that contract extension.
I mean, he did admirably last year. The defense saw very little drop off as far as quality goes. Now, the big difference was that they went about it completely differently than they had in the previous 2 years. Whereas, 22 and 23, everything was havoc. Last year, it was very much, all right, don't let anything get past us, sound tackling, that sort of thing. There, turnovers were down, sacks were down. That's just, okay, you lost a bunch of NFL guys, but also just the scheme wasn't there. Now, part of that was Khalil Jacobs got injured, and he was the havoc linebacker. You had Darius Smith, who was injured in fall camp, so you really couldn't deploy that joker position that he really wanted. These are all excuses, and I think some of them are valid. I am with you, though. 1 season and then extended. Okay. Does that mean someone was sniffing around? Not around the timing. No, I don't think so. Otherwise they would have done it in the spring. So, kind of curious why they did that. Then again, Eli Drinkwitz did get his contract renewed, and it did include a lot of extra money for assistance. So yeah, sure, maybe you just do it right now and lock it down so he doesn't have a bad year. But dude, he's gonna have a good year. You can't have all that talent and have a bad year, or you're fired, I guess, and then we'd all very much regret that. So yeah, I'm curious about that too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're very excited. We're a handful of days away from the season kicking off. You are SEC, Mike. You're on that SEC podcast. You are jumping up to 3 shows a day. You could be covering the sport inside and out. Some of the best podcasting out there. Mike and cousin Shane do great work. And of course, by the way, he's in a Netflix movie, so you might as well jump on there because college football's around the corner. Is there anything? What else are you doing? Is there anything that I'm missing? You're just a jack of all trades over here.
Yeah, I don't know if your listeners are Paul Feinbaum fans, but I'll be on there getting made fun of about every other week, seemingly, it seems like. Awesome.
I love Feinbaum. Love having you on Feinbaum. That was one of my favorite moments, having you get on the stage there many years ago, and now you're a staple, and I love that. That's great. But yeah, thank you very much, SEC Mike. We'll just keep our eyes open and see how this season falls out. Best of luck to you, and everybody, pay him money. He's good at what he does. Listen to his show. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Absolutely. MIZ.
DOU. My thanks again to SEC Mike for joining us today. You should listen to his show, That SEC Podcast. They are doing it every single day. They're talking about the SEC at large. Cousin Shane is his co-host. Hilarious dude. Probably one of the most favorite people in Missouri fandom at this point, even if he is a Tennessee guy. That's how cool he is. And of course, they put on great content, great information, well-connected, and tremendous guests as well. And the fact that I'm on there and considered one of those guests has nothing to do with my opinion on the caliber of those guests. But it was a good conversation with him. If you want to expand your knowledge and find out more about the SEC, obviously you can follow his podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Go onto YouTube and listen to him there. Great content during SEC Media Days and does great coverage throughout the season. But that is going to be the show for today. As always, we appreciate the downloads and the subscriptions. You can leave a comment or rate us. We love all types of feedback from you all. Or you can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Nate G. Edwards. He's at Burst to Hurst. And of course, you can follow the Rock M flagship at Rock M Nation and our podcasting outlet at Rock M Radio. We appreciate you tuning in this time. We'll try to do better next time. And until then, MIZ.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.